Hey, I'm Mablin, and you're watching my channel. Um, this story is actually quite interesting. It has to do with a 10-year-old boy whose parents moved, and he obviously moved with them, and they all went to Rose Hill, Kansas. And moving into old houses or, houses that have been rented before, sometimes things are left behind. Most of the time, the landlords go in and remove things. Or they hire people to come in and remove things. I know this because I was one of those people at one point. And so the boy moves with his family, and in the garage they find some old boxes, and they figure out that a a boy relatively close to his age, being 10, his name was Mark, and they found some of his boxes. He also had some instances there where when he was 12, he had some water issues. Not like regular water issues, but ghostly water issues. You know what I mean. So, anyway, 15 years later, he moves into a house, and yeah, we'll get back to that other part later. 15 years later, he moves into a house with his girlfriend Susan. Suze. Anyway, he rented the house, and it was an old farmhouse, and it's still in Kansas. It didn't say how close or far away from the old house that he used to live in was, but he moved in with his girlfriend, and there was a huge barn, so they decided to make it into a studio. So, of course, Susan was like, you need to go and remove all the boxes and all the junk that's still in the barn because people leave stuff behind. So he's like, okay. So he goes and he's cleaning out the barn. Later that night, around 2 a.m., they start hearing loud crashes and noises. And it apparently sounded like boxes falling and things just breaking and smashing over, like there was someone trying to break in. This lasted for several hours, but I don't know why he didn't get up and go see if they were being burglarized. I probably would have done something like that. I would have sent the guy. Fuck you, I'm not getting out of bed, especially if I have the chance of getting stabbed. Anyway, so the next day he spent the rest of the day cleaning up the barn. He didn't notice anything different. A few days later, they have 2 dogs together and a cat named Amy. All my ghost stories contain cats. Anyway, so a cat named Amy, and the dogs bark a lot, and then they get really quiet and just they look in the same spot like something's there. The cat running up the stairs to the barn, in the barn, and she sees something and she just kind of like stops and like follows it around with her eyes. And the guy thinks there might be a small animal like a little mouse or something, squirrel, and he looks around, he doesn't see anything. The cat's looking like she sees something, but there's nothing there. And so they take the animals out, and he locks the door to keep whatever's out or in, I'm not sure. Anyway, so they talk about moving, except for they can't afford it, which is kind of sad. The next morning, from the cat incident, they heard he goes to clean in the barn, and he hears a knock on the door, which seems kind of odd because they're out of the way, like 5 miles away from people. So, knocking on the door, he goes to answer it. He doesn't see a vehicle, he doesn't see anybody there. This was the first time that it happened in the daytime. So, whatever it was getting desperate for the attention that it wanted from them. later on that afternoon, he sees the house with large dark smoke pouring out of the roof of the kitchen. So he starts to freak out and he runs towards the house to see what's on fire. Could have left an appliance on, could have had an animal, they knock over shit, like candles. I don't know why they'd be burning candles if he's cleaning out the barn. Anyway, he sees the house on fire, runs toward the house, and there's nothing there. The animals are sleeping, nothing's caught on fire, there's no smoke anywhere, there's not even a smell of smoke. It's like he just kind of imagined it. So at this point he's kind of creeped out from all the knocking, the noises, the pets, and the smoke. He's just like, okay. So they tried to, even though they said that they were both atheists and they don't believe in stuff like this, they hired a priest to come in and bless the house. And, they asked if anybody had died in the house. The landlord said no. So he cleans up the rest of the barn. And as he's cleaning, he decides to look through the things, to see maybe something was recorded or maybe find a name. And he does come across a name. It's an old ID badge for the factory that's in the town, for a factory worker. And the name on it is Mark. And he kind of looks at it and he wonders if it's the same Mark that used to live in the house that him and his parents moved into when he was younger, when he was 10, having the other experiences. What if Mark had followed him in a way, or he had followed Mark in a way? So he's thinking, wow. So he goes to the landlord and asks, is this the same guy or is this just another guy with the same name? And come to find out, the same ghost that lived in the house before was the same ghost that lived in the house he's in now, from Rose Hill, which I thought was very interesting. The landlord said that he had died in a car accident where he parked on the railroad tracks and a train came along and hit him. And they said that it could have been an accident, but more likely it was probably suicide, but nobody really knows for sure. So that the parents never came by to get Mark's things. They just left him there, which is kind of sad. Because usually when a loved one dies, you want to go and get their things, get the valuable, or, valuable in different ways. Get the things that they once had. So he told Susan, his girlfriend, and they finally cleaned out the barn, made the studio out of it. I don't know if they kept Mark's things. They did, a little seance, apologizing and everything. After that, after he found out that it was Mark's and that he knew Mark from before, the experiences didn't happen again. They lived there for 5 years, and every single day, nothing happened. So it was very interesting. The woman, Susan, doesn't go in the barn because I think she's still freaked out. But he often goes in the barn and he talks to Mark, and even though nothing's happening, I think he thinks in a way that they're still listening. So kind of an interesting story. I think it's weird that, his entity would be in both places. That's why I kind of think that maybe sometimes ghosts follow people or have some sort of connection with people. So, very interesting. I thought it was kind of clever. And that's the ghost story for today. Thanks for watching.